All right, everyone, come on by for another Social Buzz Chat. We are joined by Cheryl and Mark Burgess, authors of The Social Employee. Also joining them, Mark Fidelman. What's your title?
Heckler.
Heckler, Mark Fidelman. Am I saying your name correctly? All right, excellent. So come on, grab a coffee and sit on our lovely lounges. And the conversation is starting momentarily.
Thank you very much. Mark, do you
Great.
want to start?
Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, I am Mark Burgess. This is my partner, wife, co-author, Cheryl Burgess. And we have author of The Social Employee. We have Mark Fidelman has kindly joined us. Hopefully not to heckle, but to add good things. You never know in real time, right? These things happen. Anyway, we're excited to be here as guest of IBM. IBM is a great chapter in our book. We had an opportunity to interview executives at 8 different brands a few months ago. And we got amazing stories about social that led to actually the title of the book, The Social Employee. And we've also been talking about this product as somewhat of a revolution in that it's new, it's different, whether you are a brand with 4 employees or 400,000, you still have, there's value, tremendous value to be had. There are different ways you'll start out doing that. But the concept is really catching on that we're very excited about. And so we're excited to be here today and talk a little bit about what we're going to do. I think the first thing to do is we are going to, now there is no voiceover here. There's music, but you can kind of hum along and you're not going to hear the audio. But it'll give you a sense of the social executive, which is a specific part of the social employee that we're going to talk about today. They are the catalyst, they make it go, and we'll talk about what their role is and why they're important. So roll the tape, please. Okay, so the back half of that is kind of the commercial for the book. So when you think about the opportunity, and we've asked a lot of people, are you a social executive? And to try to think about that and identify with that. The point is that within any organization, you're going to have a lot of potential social employees and real activated social employees, but a lot of it starts with the executive. So can we have the next slide, please? Next slide, please. All right, so, back one. All right, so I want to try to kind of model what the difference is. And I was thinking of your favorite football team since we're about at the Super Bowl, right? In my case, it isn't Denver or Seattle. It probably would be the Pittsburgh Steelers who didn't make it. But back to the analogy, think of the coach, in that case, Mike Tomlin. He's on the field, he's calling in the orders, he's basically defining what they need to do. He's giving them their mission, their objective, and their strategy. They're going to execute. Now, what if that individual was also a player? What if they're out there? So if you relate that to the social executive, basically the role they have is to give the mission, give the vision, give the values, to get people excited about the tools, the things you need to do to be social. But the real value comes from the employees understanding that, and this individual has to be the player. So they are tweeting, maybe they're blogging.
To, the guy that's one level below us to try to understand what the market's doing and what your customers are thinking. We can't do it anymore. Right. You're not going to be competitive.
This is a perfect segue into the next slide that'll answer part of your question.
Yes, but I like what Mark said. It's really the unvarnished voices that the execs need to hear. They need to hear those unvarnished. So that was a good point. I will tell you, the next slide talks a little bit about the research behind it. So there is a lot of research that's coming out, and more is going to be coming out on substantiating why executives need to be involved. And what we learned is from a study, from an IBM study in 2012, that only 16% of executives are involved in social. And in 3 to 5 years from now, that number is going to jump to 56%, or 57%. So there's another study. The reason why I should say why that's going to jump is because in 3 to 5 years from now, companies are going to mandate that their CEOs have some social presence because there's that transparency factor. You know that, Mark. There's studies out there by Brand Fogg in 2012 that 82% of respondents trust brands where their executives are socially involved. So did you want to talk some more about that, Mark?
I mean, let's just bring it into the real world, right? I mean, are you more likely to trust an organization where there's a big black wall in front of you and you can't see into it, and you're not hearing directly from them? You're hearing from PR people, you know, what the brand, you know, through a filtered marketing press release? Or do you, when you talk to the CEO and you could talk to them directly on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever they're communicating, and you have a direct conversation with them, which situation are you more likely to trust? And we all know that if we trust a company, we're definitely more likely to buy from them. So that's how I'd answer that.
You know, just to add to that, that we have an interesting quote in our book from a guy named Simon Sinek, who wrote a great book called Start With Why. And the quote, in part, he looks at the opportunity and the whole point about trust, in that he said there is actually part of your brain called the limbic part of your brain. I had no idea what that was before I read a little bit about it. And that's the part of your brain that deals with trust and feelings. So if there's a way to tap that, so the executive, the social executive, who is involved, who is engaging, who is leading his troops in a very, very...
And also, you have to start right away. It's not something that you can do it within like 2 or 3 days. It needs to be a time period where this works. And also, there's this whole crisis notion, too. In social crises, executives need to be one of the voices in crisis.
I'm actually going to bring Luis on this. Because here's the reality is, I mean, it's true. How many, I mean, that's very,
How many executives really?
they don't, right? So it's great to say yes to get an executive who wants to be social, have a blog. Who's writing it?
Well, I'd say, what, you can't come up with 140 characters to talk about your company? You don't have to write a blog. Just get the messaging out, link to something that represents what you are about or who you're about, and do it that way. So I say that there's all sorts of ways of engaging. You might never want to write a blog post if you're a CEO, but make people understand who you are personally as a leader, both internally and externally. It goes a long way. There's no question.
Yeah, that's a great point.
No,
I mean,
no.
140 is a great answer. 140 characters. I mean, who can't afford to not to do that? So if you think about, an executive like, David Edelman from McKinsey, who actually wrote the foreword for our book, is very out there in terms of social media. He's writing blogs. He has a great presence, but he's out there continually tweeting. He's talking to the audience, which is really a critical thing to do. So again, I think you need that. Given the study, in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to have to find a way to do it. It's going to become part of your workday.
So I have to put a little plug in for Tom Peters. As you well know, Tom Peters has tweeted this out, and there's a lot of conversations on Twitter and Facebook that he has called The Social Employee his #1 best social business book out there. And the conversations carry through, where Tom has created a PDF what he calls Some Important Stuff. In the Some Important Stuff, he's started the S-Train Imperative. And from the S-Train Imperative, I've been co-collaborating with Tom and kind of putting this information out there. So he started with the S-Train social organization, social media, social employees, and social business. And I added to the book, and you're in my book, and it's just great collaboration. As I said, we all collaborate. We're learning from each other. We're doing things together. We're here at IBM learning from what you are doing, and we're all learning as the collaborative spirit. And employees are learning from each other. And in doing so, we become more seamless, integrated, and become the brand, the voice of the brand.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.